Okay, so the main idea of today's class, we're going to speak about our inner heart. You know, the most inner section of the person. What's really truthfully inside you? We're going to speak about many ways to get into your inner heart. So, you know, if we think of things we want and we desire in our lives, and you say, I cannot imagine not having that thing, you know, sometimes, as we're going to explain, you could really be without it. You know, you can't imagine without having your coffee, or you can't imagine without, you know, eating a hot breakfast or anything like that. So if you think about the things that you really want, sometimes it might be completely reasonable. Sometimes it might be somewhat reasonable, or not entirely reasonable, or nothing to do with reason at all. So we're going to discuss this concept. So let's begin with the Torah portion, which you can see right here on text number 1. So the Torah speaks about you should build the kiyar. The kiyar was a washing basin that was used in the holy temple. The Kohanim would use it before they would serve in the temple every single morning. So you walk in, you need to wash your hands. If you don't, if the Kohen does not, we're soon going to learn that he deserves death. That's how serious it is. And by the washing of the hands we do every morning comes from this custom. It began from the priests washing their hands. That's why we do it as well. That's one of the reasons. And that's why every morning you must wash your hands. It's crucial. Some people say because of the impurity that you have during your sleep. But washing the hands is a very important part of your day. Now, continued obviously in the Holy Temple. See here in text number 2a. So now we're going to speak about some of the mitzvot, some of the obligations of this washing basin. Number 1, as we mentioned before, he must wash his hands. If he does not, he deserves death. The way you wash is he puts his right hand on his right foot, his left hand on his left foot, and that's how he washes. So first he puts his right hand on his right foot and washes. Then he puts his left foot on his left hand on his left foot, and he washes his hands. And he does that depending on the custom, but generally he does it 3 on each hand. Now, he's not allowed to do this sitting down, so it's a little of a complicated process. He has to be in shape to be able to bend down and touch his feet. So that's one of the things the Kohanim had to be really in shape. We know many things that the Kohanim had to be quick. They had to know how to do certain things with the flour, and the Kohanim had to walk on the freezing cold floor and work in the temple. So there was a lot of things that the Kohanim had a requirement to do. They're only required to wash once in the morning, as I mentioned before, and it's enough once as long as he didn't leave the temple. But if he ran home for lunch and then he came back, he's got to wash again. Now, the fact that he's obligated to wash only once a day brings us to an interesting idea. In the verse, it says that there's only 2 times he has to wash. To wash his hands: when he comes into the temple and when he approaches the altar to serve. So we see from here that he washed in the morning when he came to serve, and then he wants to go outside. You know, there were 2 altars. There was one in the temple, and then there was one in the courtyard, but still considered the property of the tabernacle, but not within the walls of the tabernacle. So if he goes to the outside altar, he's required to wash again. But wait a minute. Why was it necessary to wash again when he came to the outside altar? Wait a minute. We just said that all you need to do is wash once in the morning. Why, when he goes to the altar outside, would you require him to wash if it's still within the property of the tabernacle? So the answer could be very simple. If you want to look at it in simple terms, of course, he's not going outside, but the outside of the walls of the tabernacle where the yard was, Levites are allowed to go there. Israelites are allowed to go there. It's not necessarily designated only for priests. Because of this, we require him to wash his hands. Maybe there was a Levite there or an Israelite that wasn't so holy. Maybe he didn't wash his hands before. So therefore, we require him to do an extra washing when he goes outside to do a service on that altar. That's the simple explanation. Okay, now we're going to explain, by the way, there's two altars, like I said before. There's the inner altar and there's the outer altar. We're going to try to explain this the way our lives work, that we have the inner part of our lives and then we have the outer part of our lives. So let's discuss this as follows. Till now, we have spoken about the inner altar and the outer altar. Now we're going to speak about it, how it's connected to our lives. As we see here in text number 5, there's the inner and outer dimensions of your heart. How does this align with the inner and outer altar? So the first Lubavitcher Rebbe explains in the book of Tanya, which you all have heard of, that the difference between the inner and outer heart will explain psychologically. These are two ways you could feel your relationships and feelings and beliefs with God. The best way to explain this is, and this is the way that makes the most sense, there are things that you feel because you thought about it. Let's give a few examples of things you feel because you thought about it and that's why you feel that way. Let's give an example. You decided you want to be an accountant. Why? Because you're good with numbers. All right. So it makes sense. You want to be an accountant because you're good with numbers. Someone wants to be an artist because they know how to draw. You decided you want to eat fish or chicken or quinoa because it has a lot of protein. Okay, so you found a reason why you want to eat fish. You want to put on a t-shirt this morning because it's comfortable. Okay, that's a reason. You purchased yourself an iPhone because you like the way it takes pictures and you like its cool cases. But really, that's an outer reason. Because if there's no iPhone in sight, obviously buy another phone. If the garment you like is in the laundry, you'll put on something else. If there's no fish to eat, you will eat something else that has protein, or maybe something that doesn't have protein at all. Of course, you love everything, but it's not a deep-seated choice that you cannot change. Of course, it's great to buy an iPhone, but if it's not possible, you will buy something else. Then there are things that don't make sense. It's like part of you that you can't change. There is no reason, like I told you, the reason you want to put on the t-shirt is because it's comfortable. The reason you want the iPhone is because it takes good pictures. But the love from a parent to a child, or from a child to a parent, of course, I could give you 100 reasons why you should love your child or why you should love your parents, but that's not the reason. That's still not the reason. I'll tell you, oh, you should love your dad because he took such good care of you. Love your son because you gave birth to your son. That's still not a good reason. It's above reason. It's deep in your heart. You know, even if you want to look at the iPhone, the moment you see there's no benefits that you thought about, you'll change your mind. So it's not a real reason. It has a reason, but then if the reason changes, then you'll give up and you'll get another phone. When it comes to a child, you don't need a reason. You love your mom or your because they took care of you when you were a child. Guess what? If God forbid they didn't take such good care of you, any mature adult will still love their parents because it's just engraved inside us to have this love for our parents and for our children. Now, these two dimensions are in every relationship. For instance, to your spouse, there's elements in a relationship which make sense. The reason that both of you share your life together, but ultimately it has to be a much deeper reason. There has to be a selfless reason why you're with each other. If everything has a reason, oh, I love her or I love him because he's kind to me. Well, it's not gonna really hold because, and if they stop being kind to you, then what happens? So the relationship has to be based on something much deeper. For instance, you do something for your spouse because she asked you to take out the garbage. Okay, so it makes sense you should take out the garbage. But you know, sometimes she might ask you, could you call the Uber for me? But you know she could do it herself. Or you ask her, could you make my doctor's appointment for me? But really you could do it yourself. So that's where real love comes in. That you don't just say, oh, why don't you call it yourself? Or why don't you do it yourself? No, you're there for them, even without any reason. The same thing is the same thing is explained by the first Lubavitcher Rebbe explains. Our relationship with God. There's numerous reasons that you could explain why you love and fear and thank Hashem. And why you should have a relationship with him. But this is all an outer reason. It's because he gives me health. Because he gives me wealth. Because he takes good care of me. Guess what? If God forbid things are not going the way you want, you're not so happy with your life, are you still going to love and fear Hashem? Of course. There's a deeper connection that's not based on reason. It's engraved in your soul. There's the deeper versus the not so deep. Now we're going to explain on practical terms, what does it mean to get into the deep part of your soul? Like the inner altar and the outer altar. We're going to understand this through explaining the difference in the service. You know, when you served in the altar, in the altar inside the holy temple, they brought incense. In the outer altar, they brought animals. What's the connection between incense and the inner part of your heart and a sacrifice with the outer part of your heart? The difference between the outer part of your heart, the more revealed part, and the deeper part is where your heart is holding. The inner heart is completely, deeply committed to God. The outer heart is still struggling with its commitment and attachment. And it's a service. It takes effort. The outer altar, you bring sacrifices. What's a sacrifice? It's an animal. That means I still have inappropriate desires. I still maybe don't want to eat kosher so all the time. I still maybe not ready to keep Shabbos yet. I still have my animal desires. That's the outer altar, which shows on the outer part of my soul. But deep inside, we all have this inner connection with God no matter what. It's increased holiness, moving from one level to a higher level, higher to higher. The outer altar is the concept of bringing an animal, which is getting rid of the bad and going to the good. Because deep inside, every single one of us, we have this strong inner connection with Hashem that's not changeable. And by the way, God forbid, when it comes to a situation where they ask a Jew, do you rather die or do you rather convert to another religion or bow to the idol? Most Jews of our history, as we know, were willing to die because they wanted to die as a Jew. So we understand more Kabbalistically and deeper that you go to the outer altar, which is connected more with negativity. I need to wash my hands. I need to be careful. You know, when you're going out in the freezing cold, you need to put on a coat. And if it's really cold, you need to put on earmuffs and a scarf and a double sweater and 3 pairs of socks and really protect yourself. When you're engaged in the physical world, if you don't try to protect yourself and wear many garments, which is through studying Torah like you're all doing right now, through prayer, through charity, you're not going to be able to protect yourself from the outer world. Because when you're working with a mundane physical world, and sometimes you're dealing with negativity, there's a constant risk of falling. And therefore, every time you approach the outer altar, which means the more mundane physical world, you have to be more careful. But when it comes to the inner heart, one washing is enough. By the way, it's explained also that when someone gets married, they have to create boundaries. What does that mean? That means you're coming from yeshiva where you were studying all day and now you're married and maybe you're not so engaged in the Torah study. You have to create boundaries and engage more in Torah study. Engaged not more than when you were in yeshiva, but you have to set aside time for Torah study, which is like your coat that's going to protect you from the outside world. So practically speaking, how do you reach this inner heart? How do we get there? How am I going to be able to get to my inner heart that's so deep inside me? Well, the way we get there is not through washing hands, because that's not what applies today. But the way we get there, as the Alter Rebbe explains, that through prayer, see here in text number 9 from the first Lubavitcher Rebbe explains, through the idea of prayer, you're able to get into the depth of your heart. Have you ever watched somebody pray and moving? Some people move a lot and they're shaking and they're connecting their soul to God. Your entire purpose of your human experience is to connect with your inner soul. The problem is sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you're not plugged in. To create this relationship with God. How do you do this? We all rather, watch sports. We're into our career, a vacation, the market, which is beautiful, and it's all for a holy purpose. But how could I essence of devotion to God? How could I make it that that's what I really care about? And my life is filled with it. It's almost impossible. What makes us happy? A good meal. You ate a good dinner, you have a good lunch, you made a good few dollars. How do we allow ourselves to really connect with this deep part of our soul? We're more worried all day about our bills, movies, job offers, and not to mention the argument you had with your boss this morning. That's what we're dealing with. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe explains a practical way to get into yourself and to realize the deeper part of your soul, which many times it's neglected. So when you pray, you pour your heart and soul out to Hashem. You might have to do heavy lifting to access this inner part of your soul. You will feel a personal redemption when you do it. It's above all reason, and you tap into this essence of your soul. And as the Alter Rebbe explains in text number 10a, and the Rebbe explains it even deeper, that through prayer, you're uncovering the essence of your soul even more than Torah and more than his commandments. Because Torah, you have to understand, you're using your personal knowledge. Commandments are very limited. Think about it. The tefillin be 4 corners, square. It has limitations to it. The lulav has to have a certain height. It has to have certain branches. Every mitzvah has a limit. The matzah has to be made round. You have to eat it on Passover. You have to eat a certain amount of matzah. Shofar, it has to be a certain length. It has to be complete. You blow it at a certain time. Every mitzvah has a limitation. So again, it's not unlimited, it's limited. So luckily, the Alter Rebbe explains and takes it another step further. For some people, prayer might be a little too hard. It might be out of their reach. How could regular people break free from distractions and engage in prayer? Of course, we're talking about everybody has to pray, but I'm talking about being completely devoted to the prayer. So Chassidus, the Chassidic philosophy explains, today, it comes mainly through charity. When you give charity, you give up your hard-earned money. Now, by the way, even if you somehow didn't work hard for your money, maybe you won the lottery, maybe someone left you $10 million, maybe you didn't work hard for it, but still, you could buy something very valuable with that money. So any money you give, especially when you work hard for it, it's very special. And I'll tell you why. Think about what it takes to make $100,000. Let's say a businessman. You have to go to the office. You have to deal with clients. You have to deal with kinds of things, with paperwork. People maybe have to travel overseas, so they have to take a plane, and they have to take a hotel, and they have to eat in a restaurant, of course, kosher, and they have to meet people. All the things you did to make that $100,000 is being uplifted now when you give that $100 to charity, or whatever amount it is. everything is being uplifted. Everything that involved in that earning your money. It's your life. And by the way, for people that struggle and live from paycheck to paycheck, for them, it's even much harder and much greater, because that $100 could literally stop them from buying meat, and instead they're eating, salad for dinner or whatever it is. So they're literally giving away from their comfort to help others. They're literally redeeming their soul, as we said. You're redeeming the deepest part of your soul. So now we can understand how you connect and get into the deepest section of your soul. Why? Because it's associated with something physical. In many worlds, spiritual worlds, very lofty and holy. But guess what? In the eyes of Hashem, they're insignificant. He sort of doesn't even care so much about them. He cares about this world. The holiest angel and the holiest world are small in the eyes of Hashem. Hashem created this world which is removed from him. It's distant from the truth. And guess what? Many people, unfortunately, say that the world was created on its own. And unfortunately, there's millions of people that are atheists that don't even believe in his existence at all. I was talking to someone the other day, and he said he's going to an atheist convention. First time I've ever heard of that. He's going to enhance his atheism, or whatever you call it. So in case he thought of believing in God, he wants to make sure that shouldn't enter in his mind. So he's joining this group that's going to keep him away from ever thinking that maybe, the fact that you keep on fighting, it means there's something there, that maybe you really have some deep, as we said here, there's some deep belief in Hashem really inside you. Why did Hashem make this physical world remote from him, so far away? Because he gains pleasure when the further it is. And they still serve Hashem. Like the example, if you have two children, one child is an A student and the other one is a C student. And then the C student gets an A, you obviously have much more pleasure from the C child that got an A than the A child that got an A, because he really worked on himself. In this physical world, we rather enjoy ourselves than come to a Torah class or pray. So when you do it, Hashem gets so much pleasure. And that's why this physical world is where he gains the most pleasure. Like I said before, your hard-earned cash, you give to charity. So, we all want many things, and on many different levels. You, of course, cannot compare what you want. You cannot compare the fact that you want a hot breakfast to the fact that you want financial security. Both of them you want. Of course, one is more important than the other. Or we want our children to be mentally healthy. That's something we also want. These are all different types of needs. The truth is, and the most important thing today is, not to be caught up with the external. Go deep inside you. A Jew has a deep soul inside us, and this is part of God. Go into your real truth. There's many stages to get there, to access the deeper self. Now we've learned two simple solutions: prayer and charity. They're both practical tools to come there. Prayer might take a little harder work, Turn off your phone. Turn off everything. Even 5 minutes, focus on prayer. You'll feel so good about yourself. You'll feel so connected. Charity is much more tangible, much easier in a way to make this world a dwelling place for God. Think about how much you get out of this dollar bill. Literally, you give a dollar bill or $100 bills or whatever you give to charity. Think about how you're uplifting all your physical to holiness. If nothing else, the point here is to understand this. Get out of your external, yourself, and try to do like King David said, Bakshu Fanai means search the essence of God. Or as the Hasidic philosophy says, Zuch Pnimius, which means go for the heights. Don't go for the lower levels. Go for your deeper part of your soul to ultimately connect with Hashem from the highest level possible. So what we want, we all have reasons why we want things, but you'll see that the reason you want to pray and the reason you want to put on tefillin and the reason you want to study Torah comes from a deep essence part in your soul. Chaim, and happy Shushan Purim, which is the day after Purim today.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
A question.
Sure.
You mentioned that the washing the hands in the morning is related to what the high priest did, as you described, right? But we don't wash the feet like that. Do you know why they dropped that part off for us?
The reason we don't wash the feet is because in the temple, they walked barefoot. So because they walked barefoot, their feet had to be cleaned to be able to do the barefoot walking. It's like, you know, your hands touch things, so their feet touch things.
Okay.
We're wearing a cover or socks or something. That's number one. Number two, there are people, I mean, minority of people that are careful every single morning to immerse themselves into a mikvah before they do the morning service. This is the same idea, even though the Kohen didn't go into the mikvah, but the idea of being completely cleansed, or at least to shower before they do the morning prayer. So yes, yeah, that's a good question. Yes, and the washing the hands in the morning is so important that especially for a Jewish person, that if we don't wash our hands, the food becomes impure, and then you're eating impure food. So it's
and then you can't uplift it.
You can't uplift it, and yeah, exactly, and it becomes impure. So it's pretty serious to not wash our hands. Not just washing with soap; it has to be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, or minimum 4 times. The Chabad costs 6. If you want to know what Chabad does, whatever everyone else does, we do exactly opposite. So that's how we work. Anyways,
Rabbi,
yes,
I'm always fascinated when I listen to you talk, but tonight you were talking to me.
I'm happy to hear that, Hilda.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Hello, Hilda.
Hi, how are you?
Doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing okay too. There are some days that you struggle more than others.
Yes, exactly.
When we hear the rabbi talk and you've been struggling, it feels so good.
Good, Baruch Hashem. I'm happy I was make another Jew happy.
Absolutely, Baruch Hashem.
Good. How's it going in Boca Raton?
Great. It's a great life here.
Good.
I don't see too many goyim. I'm with all Jews.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Did you move to Boca?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I moved. I'm still in Baltimore, but for the winter, I'm in Boca.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. We moved out of Miami. And we live in a pretty much 99% Jewish country club.
That's
And I have
good.
3 Chabads. One is within walking distance. Nothing like the Miami Chabad, like with Rabbi Mann or
Of
Rabbi
course.
Mann in Baltimore, because they're not, it's too big. It's too big. You know, I'm used to small.
Right.
Yeah. So, but Baruch Hashem for everything. Brian is flying out tonight. He's on his way to Israel with Chabad, Baltimore.
Nice.
Wow, nice. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Lucky him.
Yeah. I was very worried. I was worried about it. I asked him not to go. He went. He went.
Good.
You can't, a 49-year-old guy, son, please don't do it.
Yeah,
That's
well, I'm
all-
sure the Rebbe
me-
said Israel is the safest place in the world, so you have nothing to worry about.
But still, as a mom, I worry about it.
Of course, rightfully so, but don't worry. Hashem will protect him. He's with the
Yeah.
right crowd.
All right. Good night.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, Zygazont, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.